A very warm welcome to the latest episode of the Big Points F1 podcast. Tom here with Sam and Jonny, and it is our job today to look ahead to the Monaco Grand Prix. Traditionally, a place where picking the top 10 order is perhaps a little easier after qualifying than it is at some of the other races. Have you, Sam, scored particularly well at Monaco in the past?
I think we've had the last couple of seasons where the engine regulations have been such that overtaking was so difficult that I think that it's always been a big point scorer over the last couple of years, and it sort of puts you off trying to do anything too crazy, because there was that race a couple of years ago where with the early crash and everyone changing tires, and it was then just a procession. There were some massive points scored. So yeah, it's a good place for big points, but also a difficult place to sort of go differential, if you understand what I mean.
Did we not get, Jonny, a legendary perfect score in that one race? Because after the restart, there were no overtakes at all, were there?
Well, no, that was 2024 edition. And yeah, it was I think, correct me if I'm wrong, probably maybe the only time in history where the race result was the qualifying grid, essentially. So yeah, perfect score, minus, I can't remember if anyone got correct first retirements and fastest lap as well. But from the top 10, there were clean sweeps, but and definitely big points scored. But that prompted a very swift change in the rules and regulations. Because just back then, as a quick backstory, if predictions weren't submitted, then the qualifying grid was taken. And I think at least 3 inactive players as well had qualifying grid taken, and I was floundering at the bottom. And all of a sudden, I was just overtaken by these 3 inactive players who scored 70 points out of nowhere.
It's just like real F1, Jonny. It's just like real F1.
Yeah.
The moment that some constructors end up with this kind of advantage, the likes of you and I, who have gone on alternate strategies and have been been scoring badly, we lobby, we get the rules changed, and the default top 10 from qualifying is no longer in active play if you don't submit your top 10 predictions. It's our job to submit those top 10 predictions, 10 points for 10th, a point for first, and obviously everything in between. Monaco may be a place that we can look forward to some big points this weekend, but I've got a bit of trivia to start off today's Monaco podcast, and it involves one-time race winners. Can you guys name any single race winners? It doesn't have to be at Monaco, but bonus points if it is at Monaco. Anyone who's won one race in their career?
Trying to think,
and no more, of course.
Now,
no more. One race. Well, we discussed this maybe just pre-pod, but perhaps I know Olivier Panis won in Monaco in '96 for, I think it was Ligier back in the day. I don't remember him winning any other races, so I'll throw that out there. But
yeah, I think Olivier Panis is a bonus point answer. He won at Monaco and nowhere else. Jonny, have you got another one?
I can't remember. This is my memory failing me again, but whether Jarno Trulli won anywhere else. But I can't remember which year it was in Monaco, but I can't remember if he won anywhere else.
No, I think that is the other answer for more recent F1 that I was looking for as well. Early 2000s, Jarno Trulli in the blue and yellow Renault. And I think that was the famous Trulli train. That was his only race victory. So perfect answers of one race winners and Monaco race winners.
I'll throw out quickly. I know Ocon and Gasly are still, I think, just on one. I think.
Yeah.
But that's still current grid and could still change.
There's a few more out there. We'll leave some of them for the listeners. Put them in the comments below. Obviously, like and subscribe to the pod if you can, if you're enjoying this. But also leave a comment of anyone that you can think of who's a one race winner. If you can name which race it was and which year it was, then even better. Bonus points to you. But I look forward to looking through some of those. But we've got Panis and we've got Trulli for now. From those one-time race winners, Sam, I believe you wanted to talk today about somebody who won rather more than once around the streets of Monaco. Is that correct?
Monaco is still the jewel in F1's crown, but you can't talk about Monaco without talking about Ayrton Senna and his astonishing record there. I think it's probably the driver and track domination combo that is probably unbeaten. He's the record holder with 6 wins around Monaco, which is astonishing. And there was a period from between '84 and '93 where only Senna and Prost won the Monaco Grand Prix. So between them, they won every single edition between that period, which is just astonishing. And and some of Senna's victories, at Monaco were absolutely incredible. His first one was in '87 with Lotus. After some really strong showings the previous 3 years. I think he come second and a second twice and a third, so he was always banging on the door. The end and the Monday following that race was probably even more remarkable because he got a bit of a slap on the wrist for spraying the Monegasque royal family with champagne on the podium, which I think we got a little bit of a telling off for. And then on the Monday following the race, he was actually arrested for driving his motorbike through the streets of Monte Carlo without wearing a helmet. So he got pulled over by the police on the Monday following the race, and he was, I think reports say he was arrested. I think he was just stopped and detained, and then I think he showed the police his ID, and they realised who he was, and they let him go on his merry way. So
showed him the trophy, perhaps, to the police.
Yeah, exactly. I think they slowly put two and two together from the Monday before. And the following year in '88 wasn't a win for Senna, but it should have been, and he probably should have won this race 7 times, because in 1988 he was 50 seconds clear in P1 and then just inexplicably crashed into the guardrail before the tunnel, which was just devastating. And he was so devastated that he left his car, he got up, and he just went home. He didn't even go back to the garage or back to his team. He just went back to his apartment and wasn't seen until the following race, the following race weekend. He was just absolutely distraught.
Shades of Kimi Räikkönen there, wasn't it?
Like very much shades of Räikkönen walking and sitting on his yacht. Yeah, absolutely. 90 and 91 and 89 and 90 and 91 were as far as F1 cakewalks in terms of races. He absolutely dominated all those 3 editions. But then 1992, was another massive victory for Senna. In '92, Williams were pretty unstoppable with that new electronic active suspension they had. The car was just so far better than anything else on the grid. Mansell was leading that race in the Williams by quite some distance, but then he had some issues and had to make an unexpected tyre change, which put Senna into the lead with about 8 laps to go. I think Mansell was about 8 or 9 seconds behind, which he destroyed that lead in 2 laps. Such was the unstoppable nature of the car, but Senna's incredible defensive driving held him off for all those laps, sort of beyond any expectation that he'd be able to do that. And they finished the race 0.215 seconds behind each other, literally, with Mansell on his tail the whole time. So just an incredible defensive effort from him. And then the '93 race was his 6th win, and it had a nice bit of sort of F1 poetry to it, because he winning that race, he broke the record set by Graham Hill, and then he also shared the podium with Graham's son Damon, who made the podium that day. So a nice bit of F1 poetry, with Senna breaking his dad's record, but getting to share the podium with his son, which was a nice thing to see. And that race wasn't easy for Senna either. He both had to overtake Prost and Schumacher on that race after a sort of a less than ideal qualifying, and round Monaco overtaking Prost and Schumacher in one race is no mean feat. So yeah, a truly astonishing record at Monaco, and he really is. He is the king of that track until someone comes along and can get 7 wins. But I'd be very surprised if that happens anytime soon.
Very nice indeed. Monaco and Senna, name a better combination. Yeah. I think that run that you mentioned there, when it was just Senna or Prost who won at Monaco, that helped kind of enshrine it in the modern day as it's a track where legends win generally. Yeah. If you win that one, it is still a jewel in the crown. A driver who hasn't won the championship, if they've won Monaco, it's the next best thing, isn't it?
I think if you talk to someone like Daniel Ricciardo or David Coulthard or Jarno Trulli, as you mentioned, they didn't win world championships, but they've got that tick on the CV of Monaco Grand Prix winner.
Absolutely. It is a big one. Obviously, we know qualifying, massively important. You alluded to it there, even in the 80s. It's so hard to overtake. It's defensive driving is a big thing on the Monaco Grand Prix Sundays. Getting the Saturday right is important. Getting your strategy on the Sunday right absolutely vital as well. Jonny, you've got some stories of strategies that didn't quite pan out the way that drivers wanted them to, have you not?
I do indeed, and thank you for that blast from the distant past, Sam. So my Monaco moments are more from the recent past, I guess, within the last 10 years, let's say. And as you just mentioned, Saturday is crucial, of course, but all that work on Saturday can unravel very quickly if something goes wrong or a wrong call is made. And Sam just alluded to Mr. Ricciardo. 2016 was an unfortunate year for him in the Red Bull before his Renault and McLaren days. And the two small kind of incidents or stories or moments I have, they both unfortunately involved botched pit stops. I guess uncharacteristically from Red Bull in 2016 when track dried out and decision to go from wets to intermediates became pretty apparent. Red Bull decided to. At the time, Lewis Hamilton stayed out on his wets. But then when it came to the round of pit stops to get onto the super softs, if anyone remembers those tires, those purple stripes, Lewis came in, and then at the same time as Max, I think, and then a lap later, Danny Rick came in. Correct call. But I think the call was very late, too late, unfortunately. I think the mechanics were still in the pit lane for Max Verstappen's stop, but the tyres weren't ready, unfortunately, which led to Danny Rick sitting for I'm not sure how many seconds, but long enough, of course, to be undercut by Lewis Hamilton. And the podium picture, I think, at the end sums up the emotions. Because I think it was Checo Perez in third as well for Force India back in the day. So, yeah, two drivers that were completely elate, and then one really downtrodden Aussie. But yeah, so like I said, we had Daniel Ricciardo in pole, wet conditions, botched pit stop. But then we fast forward to 2022, I believe. We have Mr. Charles Leclerc from Monaco himself, of course, starting on pole. I think it was him from his teammate Sainz, and then the two Red Bulls. Similar kind of story. Red Bull pulled the pin first with Perez. I've got notes in front of me saying lap 19, going from, again, wets to intermediates. But Ferrari, I think they've built up an unfortunate reputation of delaying calls or indecision, let's say. They left their call 2 laps too late, I guess, which lost Leclerc a bag of time on that 1 lap extra that he stayed out. And yeah, led to a bit more confusion. They brought Sainz in, who hadn't stopped in the first round of pit stops. And yeah, I think on the last corner, Leclerc got a call to come in. And then while he was just entering the pit lane, engineer, stay out. I think like Bono in Hockenheim it was the other way around. It was like in. But yeah, this led to Leclerc losing 4 seconds, and anyone who watches the race back, the top 4 were literally nose to tail. So 4 seconds is obviously a huge amount of time, and this led to a very disgruntled Charles Leclerc. So yeah, Saturday job was done by these two drivers, but unfortunately, due to wrong pit calls or team crews not being ready, it was the difference between second and first and fourth for the two drivers, unfortunately.
Great stories, or terrible stories, for those drivers on those particular days. But I think the good thing is that at least there was some catharsis from both of those, because both of them have then since gone on. Obviously, Leclerc winning at home in Monaco, the one that he always wanted. Ricciardo, the one that got away. He managed to win a couple of years later, and then obviously did this very, very famous swan dive into the pool, which nobody can forget. But just thinking back through some of the legendary sort of Monaco Saturdays as well, we had Schumacher parking the car to kind of block off qualifying for those behind him, for Alonso back then. We've had Rosberg maybe doing the same to deny Hamilton a shot at a clean lap. And then we had Checo with a crash. I don't think he was doing it deliberately, but Checo with the crash a couple of years ago, which stopped Max from getting a good lap in. So Saturday strategy somehow comes into things as well, doesn't it? But looking ahead to this weekend, do you see something like that happening? Is it going to be another sort of divergent strategy kind of race, a bit of a mix-up, or is the fact that there's going to be no active aero going to mean that even with these new cars, everything is sort of as you were?
I think looking forward to this weekend is going to be, it'll be interesting to see how these new regulations fit around, a track like Monaco, which, is so narrow, and overtaking opportunities are few and far between. But I think what we've seen from so far this season is that teams have worked out ways and places on the tracks so far that we've had to overtake where you usually wouldn't overtake, especially in the last, based on the last round of regulations. So I think it's going to be an interesting one, to see how the boost is used, how the overtake mode is used, maybe a bit more yo-yoing. I think we've seen. I'm pretty sure so far this year, everyone who has started on P1 hasn't led at the end of lap one. So whether that changes, this weekend, that'll be interesting to see. But I think some of the, so that like a team like Ferrari, who were very good in the low speed corners in Canada, if they continue that setup, Monaco has a lot of low speed corners, and you've got two drivers there who are very, very experienced around the tracks. They could be, maybe it could be another Ferrari weekend, but they've got to get the strategy right.
Yeah, that little shot down into Sandoval's turn one, it's only a short squirt until the first right-hander. Yeah, you're right. Of course, the drivers on the front row of the grid haven't necessarily gotten away quickest this season. Could definitely be an opportunity for somebody, a very rare Monaco win from perhaps further back. Really interested to see whether, even without active aero, these new cars will be able to actually find overtaking places, with battery divergence and stuff, deploying battery at different times. Maybe something's still going to happen.
Yeah, just picking up on the strategy again, I think Monaco at the best of times is a strategist's nightmare, let alone this year with all the new rules and regulation. So I have to apologize if you can hear any baby screaming. That's Mina trying to get onto the pod as well. So
welcome to the pod, Mina.
Welcome to the pod. Yeah,
but yeah, sorry, what was I? Yeah, it's strategist nightmare Monaco, but I think what we've seen this season so far is that drivers have just been more audacious and with these extra tools that they've got. And although it's harder to find overtaken places, I think we might see cars trying to drop it down the inside of certainly, of course, Sandoval at the first corner, but be more creative. And I could see a scenario where there'll be multiple safety cars, red flags. Because in Japan, in Canada, when cars have tried audacious moves, tracks have been forgiving. They've been runoff areas. You can go across, but we know Monaco. There's no forgiveness there at all. So and locking up. I mean, the one area I guess for locking up would be after the tunnel. So we've seen a few lockups with these new regulations and higher speeds, but yeah, I could just see multiple incidents happening, and strategy up and down the paddock is probably going to could decide the race, and certainly decide the top 10, and it arguably give every team a chance of getting points. So.
Yeah, really looking forward to this. Some new drivers, or obviously same drivers, but new cars completely. Some of them are going to be, eager to prove that overtaking around Monaco is doable, and nobody quite knows the limits yet, do they, around this track with these new cars? So we might be on for a bit of an exciting and a bit of a different Sunday. Forget about our top 10 predictions for now. We'll have to see in the app after qualifying on Saturday what people go for. But Sam, I'll start with you. Who would you want to win? If you could pick a winner for Sunday, who would it be right now?
Oh, pick a winner for Sunday. You know what? I'll go with the romantic choice, and I'll say Lewis, and say, no race win for Ferrari yet. What a place to do it. It would be, he was, on much better form in Canada, seems much more at home with the car, and obviously he has got plenty of form for winning the Monaco Grand Prix. So that would give me a smile if Lewis brings his first Ferrari win to Monaco.
Very nice. Jonny, who's your preferred Monaco Grand Prix winner?
I was going to say the same. I think it's all teed up for a Lewis to finally break his Ferrari duck. But I think after having the weekend they had in Montreal, it'd be nice to see McLaren kind of bounce back on the Saturday and Sunday, of course, as well. One of the two, they've just had such a turbulent season. Probably Piastri more so than Norris. It'd be it's good to see them get right back into the mix because I think, as Sam said earlier, I think this is the track where other teams can really take advantage of Mercedes. So I think as the fight will be open, yeah, it'd be nice to see one McLaren. Let's just go with Norris with the British hat on. So.
All right, I didn't intend this to be too British, but my pick would be Russell. I want to see the gap between Russell and Antonelli closing up for the interest of the championship. Obviously, he was unlucky in Canada with the retirement, so I'd like to see Russell winning at Monaco, bringing that title battle back into a really interesting position. Accidental all-British trio, I promise.
Apologies.
Those are who we hope win on Sunday. I wanted to throw in, before we finish this, though, a kind of Monaco glitz and glamour story. Monaco, of course, famous for the glitz and glamour. There's often tie-ins. We've seen sort of film tie-ins. We've seen big advertising tie-ins over the years. One of the most famous, perhaps, if you go back to the early 2000s, was the Ocean's 12 film tie-in with the Jaguar team, which obviously later went on to become Red Bull. Ocean's 12, they sponsored the Jaguar team. It was Christian Klien, the Austrian, and Mark Webber, the two drivers. And they put diamonds, rumored to be worth about $250,000, onto the nose cones of those two Jaguars. And they brought the glitz and glamour, but they also brought what turned out to be a pretty interesting story, didn't they, with the way the weekend panned out?
Yeah, they did. And, they say there's no such thing as bad publicity. And I think this story really rings that to be true. So just for a bit of context, in 2004, Jaguar were really, really struggling. The Jaguar, the actual car company then, was owned by Ford. So Ford were financing this racing team, and given Jaguar's performance, they really weren't seeing any return on their investment. Sort of begs the question why they didn't call the team Ford to begin with. But anyway, that's by the by. But yeah, they were looking for ways in which they could bring some new sponsorship, get some publicity, and they thought, let's do this tie-in with Ocean's 12, and we'll put diamonds on the front of our cars. It worked to a huge extent in the build-up. You had George Clooney and Matt Damon and Brad Pitt in the Jaguar garage, all taking photos. Everyone was talking about it. But what you really don't want when you're, got diamonds on the front of your cars is to be smack bang in the midfield. So, with Webber qualifying 11th and Christian Klien qualifying 14th, there was, probably some nervous people around the Jaguar garage, and they had, turns out they had a right to be nervous, because on the first lap of the race, you can't ever see this on the broadcast footage. It didn't pick it up, but they are pretty convinced that Christian Klien made a mistake and ran into the back of Nick Heidfeld, which means by the time he got to the Lowe's hairpin, his front wing, or his front nose cone, had completely gone. Which is not ideal when you're trying to steer an F1 car around one of the biggest hairpins in Formula One. He went straight on into the barrier and was out of the race. But when they got the car back to the garage, the diamond that was on his nose cone was nowhere to be seen and has not been seen since. So obviously this caused a huge controversy at the time, and then the conspiracies as to what happened to the diamond are, there are so many stories about what could have happened. Everything from the track debris is being swept up, and there was a opportunistic marshal who's out there with his broom sweeping the track, starts sweeping, sees something shiny on the floor, he realizes what it is, and picks that diamond up and just pops it in his pocket. There's a theory that it could have bounced into one of the spectator areas, and the spectators had a very, very good Monaco Grand Prix of finding a $300,000 or $250,000 dollar diamond.
Lost a bunch at the casino the night before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and probably
what a weekend! What a weekend!
Exactly. I think one of the most what probably happened, though, I think one of the most likely is that just around that Lowe's hairpin, there are a lot of storm drains that are in the runoff area. So I think the most likely thing that happened is probably bounced off the car and just slipped and run into a storm drain, and it's probably wherever the storm drains lead, I assume somewhere floating around Monaco, or at the bottom of the harbour in Monaco. But yeah, for Jaguar, although it was another disastrous weekend because Clean was of course out of the race on the first lap, and then Mark Webber retired later in the race, I think with a gearbox failure. So in terms of a racing weekend, it was a double DNF, which is a disaster. But the publicity ended up working. They were the talk of the town, and at the end of the season, they were put up for sale by Ford, who were then subsequently bought by Red Bull, and they then became Red Bull Racing. And those employees at Jaguar probably didn't have many title aspirations back in the day when they were Jaguar. And then Red Bull Racing come along, and the rest, as they say, is history. So yeah, a real astonishing Monaco story that just continues to baffle and fascinate everybody as what happened to the diamond. So another and a true mirror of what Monaco is to Formula One.
I just
wonder if that changes. Sorry, Chum. I just wonder if that changes the driver's mindset at all. If they know they've got a $250,000 thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
the team briefing at the beginning
well
must literally be bring it home.
Yeah,
bring the car home. That's it.
I mean, the nose cone itself has got to be worth quite a lot of money these days anyway, right? But maybe it was a little bit cheaper back then. But it's a significant extra thing. It was quite special, especially as you say, there were these sort of rumors of whether it was insured properly or not. And it's just too good that Ocean's 12 was also a heist film, like a diamond heist film.
Well, no, ironically, the ironic thing is in Ocean's 12 they don't steal a diamond, they steal a Fabergé egg. But still, and the other curiosity was because of the regulations, the teams have spare nose cones. One per car. So there are actually 4 diamonds in total because they all had to be exactly the same spec to line up with Parc Fermé rules. So, there were almost £1 million worth of or dollars worth of diamonds knocking about in that Jaguar garage. It must have been very tempting for some, poorly paid engineer just to get his, get a screwdriver out and see if he can't jiggle that out and and walk home with a nice prize. But an amazing story.
Brilliant stuff. We can only hope that this weekend at Monaco, the Grand Prix will write a story just as interesting, just as crazy as that one. Let's see. We'll get our predictions in on the app for this weekend. We're looking in Big Points F1 to get the top 10 correct, especially those upper order 8, 9, 10. Those positions would be lovely. I've not particularly scored well at Monaco in the past. I hope I can put that right this weekend. Good luck, Sam. Good luck, Jonny.
Thank you.
All the best for your predictions. And we'll see you next time when we review and we look back on this Monaco Grand Prix in a few days' time. Thanks for watching. Like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, and spread the word.